What's happening, Bethany?
How are you?
Woo! It's been a day, but it's all good. I've been looking forward to this moment though for quite a while.
Sam, happy May in higher ed. It's nice to see your face. It's good to see we're surviving. I see you. I appreciate you. Hi.
Yeah, it's so great to see you. I knew when I first met you at NDSU, I said this person, they've got a great vibe, great energy. Clearly, you knew your stuff. Like that was never in question. Your resume spoke for itself. But as you know, in this business, it's all about the kind of person that you are and the positivity and energy that you bring, and you brought it. So,
Well, we're gonna just feed that right into your intro before I say all the same things I was gonna say in my introduction of you. So we're just gonna jump right in. So there are a handful of moments in life when you meet someone and feel an immediate sense of orientation, like the room just came into focus. Phil was that for me. He was the first person I met on campus at North Dakota State. And I remember walking away from that conversation thinking, oh, I have a person here. Not because of anything performative or loud, but because of an obvious alignment, a shared way of seeing the work, the people in it, and the responsibility that comes with both. Our offices were across the street from each other, and I could see the light on his window from mine, and there was something incredibly reassuring about that, just knowing he was there. Not in a constant collaborative way, but in a deeper way, someone else carrying the weight of the institutional work. And then, not long after, Phil did exactly what people like Phil tend to do. He stepped into something bigger and announced that he was heading to the University of Connecticut to serve as chief of staff to the president. And of course, he was. The kind of leader who can move between strategy and execution, who can translate complexity into action, who can sit at the center of competing priorities and still move things forward. What I've always respected about Phil is that his leadership is about both velocity and alignment. He spent more than 2 decades working across higher education systems, shaping strategy, strengthening governance, guiding enrollment and student success efforts, and advising at the highest levels of institutional decision-making. But even with that scope, what stands out most is how he shows up as a builder of trust, a translator of complexity, and a steady hand in moments that require both decisiveness and care. We've stayed in touch since he left NDSU, and every conversation reminds me why that first instinct mattered. There's a clarity in how he thinks about leadership. Less about position and more about responsibility, less about control and more about coordination and momentum. So this conversation is a gift for me, yes, but more importantly for anyone trying to lead in environments that are complicated, human, and ever changing. Phil brings a perspective shaped not just by experience, but by proximity to the decisions that actually move our institutions forward. And if you listen closely, what you'll hear isn't just how to lead, but how to do it in a way that matters. So thanks for being here today.
wow, that was humbling. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
I remember walking out of your office and being like, oh, it's going to be okay. And like, I knew that then. And it's funny to sit in this conversation now, like 3 years later and be like, no, that was real. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and look, I'm appreciative of that. And your higher ed, as you know, is at an interesting time. And if you don't have that circle of people that you can lean on, then that makes the job a whole lot harder.
And I feel like one of the things that I say a lot is that I believe in higher education because I think it is the most efficient tool for large scale societal transformation. That's what I get out of bed for. That's what I go to work for. And there are people who do their jobs well, but they go to work to do their job.
Mm-hmm.
And there are people that go to work to see the world and lives changed. And the second group, those are my people, like the people who get really passionate about what it means to be a leader and understand the reality and the role that higher education plays in our community. And so I really do, knowing that you and I have very passionate feelings about the function of leadership, I would love to know from you, what does it mean to you to be a leader in the spaces you occupy?
Ooh. It's important how you show up. And you never really know the impact that you have on someone. And so it's important to be aware and cognizant of that. Like you, I'm very passionate about higher education because I reflect on my experience as a former student and student athlete at my alma mater, where I now work now, some a long time later. I won't say exactly when, but it wasn't just the education in the classroom. It was the relationships and people that supported me, right? That believed in me, and so that is what I try to replicate. And so as I think of myself as a leader, and this, look, I didn't know this coming right out, right? But over time, it was this recognition. And I think as I think about myself in this space, I would say that I try to be authentic, right? And there's a recognition that I'm perfectly imperfect because I'm human. And by knowing that, I know that it's my calling to use my knowledge, my skills, and abilities to help people and organizations, right? To transform lives in a positive way. And I tell people when I interview for jobs, or I'm interviewing jobs, I tell people exactly who I am, right? I tell people my approach to things. Of course, you will adapt it, right, based on the realities or culture of wherever you go. But you tend to tell people, you get a good sense of, you know who you are. And as I think about leaders, it's important for leaders to know who they are. And I have no ego in what I do. And I tell the teams that. I said that to the folks when I interviewed here and other places. Look, there's no ego in this for me, right? I came here to help, right? I don't care who gets the credit, right? I'm here to help. And because I realize I'm not here for me.
Yeah.
Right. I believe in a higher power, and I know that higher power has put me in places for a reason.
Yeah.
And knowing that and believing that, there's a certain level of freedom, right? That comes with that. I'm here for a reason. I might not know what that reason is automatically, but so then that means that you have to be authentically you.
Yeah.
Because of that, right?
I presume you're busy enough that you maybe didn't look through all the questions I sent you ahead of time. Am I correct about that? I'm hoping I'm correct about that because I'm not following them.
I figured we just kind of roll through it.
Cool. I don't provide questions ahead of time to anybody, but you are incredibly busy. And I was like, and Annika asked and I care. So I sent them, but I also am like, we're going 18 different places. So if you looked at them and you're like, this is not what we talked about, that's fair. And that's fine. But I think one of the questions I would love to know is, we could talk for the entire time about the things that you just said, because I think so many things sit in them that are not understood.
Oh, yeah.
And one of them is, I'm not here for me. Nothing about this work is my ego showing up we're in the wrong line of work for that.
Yeah.
That's a little bit of a false starter. And so I think one of the questions I would ask you is, when did that become true for you, or when did you know it was true, or what does that look like? Because I think that's an idea that people hear, but they don't know how to assess that, or how to define that, or what that looks like.
Wow, that's loaded. It was something that there was something about higher ed that called to me.
Yeah.
Right. And then, you try different things, and, as they say, when one door closes, another door opens, right? I would say that recognition started when I was graduate. It's funny, probably around this time when I was in undergrad, because I was about to graduate, right? The draft had just finished.
Yep.
Right. And, I had an agent. And he says, listen, here's what we can do. There's a couple of teams interested in you in Canada. And I won't say the team's name, but there's another team that's going to invite you to camp. And no one knew this other than my my agent, and I think my mom, but I had battled a really bad knee injury my senior year. I had really bad tendonitis, so I wasn't performing very well. And coming out of what I would say where we were at the time from program, it was a mid-tier program, and I was coming in undrafted.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I had an opportunity to come back to UConn and get my graduate degree, work in athletics, and so I took that. Right.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I had the option to kind of pick and choose where I wanted to do my graduate work and my graduate assistantship. And I remember going to my defensive coordinator at the time, and I said to him, I said, coach, I said, I want to try this football thing out. I said, you've always thought I'd make a good coach. You said it yourself, and I would love to have the opportunity to be your graduate assistant while I get my master's degree. And he looked me dead in my face and he said, as long as I am breathing, you will never coach football. Yeah, that was that. That was exactly my response. I said, what are you talking about? You said you cared about me. You said you support me. And he goes, look, and this guy, he's the real deal. He went on, he just retired actually from his role on a professional team with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I still keep in contact with him. Great guy. And he and I chatted about that when I met up with him one weekend recently. And he said, he goes, you know why I did that? He says, because I saw in you the ability to be more than just a football coach. And that's not a knock on football coaches.
Right.
They're coaches, they're teachers, they transform lives.
Yep.
And he said, but my vision for you was something more.
Yeah.
And he goes, I wanted you to realize that vision too. He's like, yeah. He's like, could you do it? Of course you could do it.
Yep.
He goes, but there was something more. So now I'm sitting here thinking, oh my God, well, what does that mean? Right? Uh-huh. What does that mean? And through conversations and through mentorships, I figured out that higher ed was my passion. And I decided when I was getting my master's degree that I wanted to go to law school. And I wanted to take that skill set and bring it back to higher education. I didn't know in what capacity.
Yeah.
Right. But I knew it. Like I intrinsically knew that's what I wanted to do. And I was confident that at some point I'd figure it out. Mm-hmm. Why? Because at that time, I had done my research. I had talked to a lot of people. And at that time, higher ed was more compliance, more regulations, more things about governance. And I said, and I saw, my president at the time, my athletic director at the time, they were always surrounded by attorneys.
Yep.
And I thought to myself, wouldn't it be nice to have that skill set in-house? Mm-hmm. Right. And so I went on to law school, got that degree, and everybody in my class was like, oh, well, what are you going to practice? And I was like, I'm not going the traditional sense. I'm bringing it back to higher ed. And they all kind of looked at me like, why the heck are you even here? And I said, trust. Right. And so I did, and it hasn't proven me wrong yet.
Yeah.
And I have a love for it.
Yeah.
I have a love for it. It comes to me naturally. I am passionate about the work. And look, don't get me wrong. There are good days and there are bad days, but there are way more good days. And even on the bad days, I remain hopeful and optimistic because I understand, again, as you said, the power of higher education, because it's changed my life. Right. It's definitely changed my life. But as you talk about leadership, right, because that's what this whole podcast is about. I truly believe, and I talked to you, it's about knowing yourself. Yeah. And being honest with yourself. A few years ago, I did a presentation at a professional organization called Timid Nasce, and that means Latin for know thyself. Yes. Right? Yes. And it was a whole presentation on how do you get to know yourself? How do you get to know your skill set? And I talked about it from, we did a study on leadership, bunch of leadership quotes, and studied people who were known to be good leaders. And then we talked about assessments. There's no, and my point in all of that is like, yeah, there are different perspectives on leadership. I'm giving you another perspective. Yep. And what we know is leadership like life isn't a straight line. Right? There are trials, there are tribulations, there are different things that you can pick up on. But I think the most important thing is for you to really understand yourself what motivates you, what drives you, what things you're good at, and where you have opportunities for growth. Because when you recognize those things, not just recognize them, but you own those things, right? You become your authentic self, and that's what's important to me.
Yeah.
Right. And people want that. They want authentic leaders. Because I've learned because people have a tendency to do what? They dehumanize
Correct.
leaders, right? They put them on pedestals. They think they're holier than thou. They expect them to have all the answers. They expect them to be perfect. And the reality is they're not.
Mm-mm.
And if you think that, you're constantly going to be disappointed.
Yes.
Because it's just a matter of time before that person makes a mistake.
Yep.
Right. And so I go into this and I tell other folks, you have to know yourself. Right. Know your strengths, know your weaknesses, know where you're good at. Right. Know where there are opportunities for growth. But then you also have to know your teams and understand where you guys can lean in and lean out with one another.
Yes. And I think one of the things, so like you talked about trust, I think that's really important. But when I think about the leaders who don't know themselves, that is where like that fear, that damage, that danger, that like that exists. And I think the other thing that you've talked about is authenticity in a way that isn't like trite. Like I feel like post 2020, post pandemic, post murder of George Floyd, there was this huge, I should be able to be my authentic self at work. But we didn't define what authentic meant. Authentic did not mean I showed up a hot mess. I couldn't get through a conversation without crying. Like that's not actually the authenticity anybody wanted to show up at work. Authenticity is getting to know yourself and then showing up as that person at work. And I think that is such an important clarification around the concept of authenticity that was missing in that era of like cheap authenticity versus real authenticity.
Right. Yeah. So, nobody wants to see the Phil Hunt that's coming downstairs in the sweatpants, right? And hanging out like I'm watching a football game. Nobody wants. That's not what's needed in this particular environment. Correct.
Well, I would add, I like that you clarified not what's needed. Your leader has a role, and you need them to be someone you can follow. Like one of the things I was thinking about yesterday, I got off the phone with a former employee. And my revelation getting off the phone was just a reminder, like Bethany, a leader goes first. Like there's a leader does all kinds of things, but one of the things a leader does is go first. And like, hey, so yeah, when you want an authentic leader, you don't want football and sweats. And like, I love football and sweats actually, but when I'm at work, and the day is hard and the accusations or the failures or the non-compliance, all the reasons why both of us have different but similar legal backgrounds, because all of our work is compliance. I don't want your sweatpants to show up in that meeting with me. I want you to go first. And like, I just appreciate kind of constructing a better definition for what an authentic leader is.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, it takes the pressure off, I think. Right. Because when you don't know who you are, or you ignore who you are, and you're putting on a facade, or as some people say, you fronting.
Yeah.
Right? It's just a matter of time before it catches up with you, because you can't keep that up.
Yeah.
And people start to see through that. Yeah. And then that's when distrust starts to seep in.
Yeah.
That's when stress starts to creep in, because you're like, you feel this high level of pressure and anxiety because you're not being true to who you are, nor are you being true to other people.
Right.
So then how can you focus on what you're really good at when you're trying to be something that you're not, or you're trying to have all the answers, right? That's when leaders fail, where they feel like they need to be the smartest person in the room, where they feel like they have to have all the answers. No, that's why you have a team.
Yeah.
Right? There's a quote that's on my desk. I wrote it down when I first went to NDSU, because all the things that were going on, George Floyd, COVID, I had walked into, I mean, the stuff NDSU was going through at that time, there were a lot of challenges to navigate. And there's a note, I still have it on my desk right here, and it says, slow down. Your role is to navigate to a successful outcome, not to do all of the work.
That's it. actually.
That's it. That's it. Right. And for somebody like me, talking about knowing yourself, right? My top 5 strength finder.
I'm ready. Hand me the phone.
You ready? Okay, now I got to see if I remember all. All right, here we go. All right, it's learner, achiever, command, input, and activator.
Yeah, you want to win.
Right? So it's easy and it's natural for me to try to step in and solve every problem and do everything.
Yeah.
But that's not sustainable. It's not sustainable for me, and it undermines the team.
Yes. And like, that's the thing. Like, yes, it's not sustainable, but worse, it diminishes everyone around you. And like, I think pairing those is so important. A successful outcome doesn't mean Phil won necessarily. But it does mean, how do I bring people along with me? How do we get to a point where we can say, yes, we feel good about this?
Yeah.
And like, I think that's so important. And I think I want to go back to what you said about leaders who don't know who they are or are trying to put up a facade or are fronting. Because that takes time. And what I want from a leader is to know they're maximizing their time. So if you're translating or code switching in every single meeting and interaction we have, I actually don't trust you at baseline, not just because I don't know who you are, but it's a waste of resources that I don't understand. And like, that is maybe incredibly autistic of me, but it is how I feel. Like, I'm busy. So I want to know that, like, if I'm on this phone call and you work for me, 9 times out of 10, you can hear what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Because you know what we're working on and you know who I am and you know how I navigate this world. And I do think one of the most helpful quotes in conversations around leadership was when Simon Sinek said, transparency isn't telling your team everything, it's helping them understand the landscape you make your decisions in. Like, because I think sometimes when we talk about transparency or authenticity, people say, my staff can't know everything I know. No one said they should.
Correct.
Like, at no point is that what I said. What I said was, are you a transparent leader? And what does that look like?
That's right. That's right. Exactly. And look, you think about, I don't know where I read this, but most relationships fail, right? Because trust was broken or expectations were not met.
That's it.
Think of relationships, professional or personal. Did you meet expectations? Right?
Yep. Well, and so like, we've talked about trust a lot. And so I would love to know, I'm going to forget her name, so I want you to ignore that. But one of my favorite memories was being at Frisco in 2025 and meeting somebody in the concourse and then being like, you're friends with Phil. And I was like, you're friends with Phil. And we're like, yeah. And then had a great growing relationship with this person who I genuinely like had probably seen on campus, but really hadn't met until literally like walking into the women's bathroom at, I don't know, Toyota Stadium or wherever we were. I want to talk about trust, because that moment is you and I share a person that we both trust. And so I would love to know from you, like, how do you go about being trustworthy as a leader and building trust with your teams?
Oof. It's what you said. You have to be transparent and you have to show up for them. And when you show up for them authentically and genuinely, people tend to reciprocate. They might not immediately, right? But people tend to reciprocate. Look, we're human beings. We are social creatures. We were designed that way. Forget about all the political jargon around being social and socialism. Like, no, like, we would not have made it this far as a species if we didn't depend on one another. Hard stop. Okay.
Yes.
So, right. So there are certain things, right? Whether social science or just regular science that people look for, right? And there are ways to build trust. And I try to do that. And I start by showing up for people, being authentic, and listening, right? Where do you need help? What are the things that you're struggling with? What do you understand the priorities are?
Oh,
Because alignment is huge, because alignment gets to the expectation piece.
yeah.
Right. And I'm going to quote my buddy Jeff, right? I'm going to quote my buddy Jeff Boyer, who, if you guys haven't seen that podcast episode, check it out.
Love of my life, Jeff Boyer. Yes.
So I'm going to steal something that he and I used to talk about a lot when we were in the issue. And we talk about being CIA, being coordinated, intentional, and aligned. And I'm going to expand on it. I've expanded on it a little bit since then. And what I talk about with our team here is that we want to be coordinated in our approach, intentional with our actions, and aligned in our thinking.
Yes.
Right?
That would solve a lot of problems. Maybe all of them. Like that's really everything.
Yeah. When you take the time, right? Because everybody wants to get to the outcome. And look, I'm an activator. I'm command. I'm achiever. I like that too.
Yeah.
But in order to get there, there's a process and there's a plan to get there.
Yeah.
You plan the work, you work the plan. And sometimes you got to take a few steps back to say, how do we best get there? You do that by getting your team on board. It's funny, when I first got here, I had an interesting conversation with Gino Oriema. And he was here, he was coaching when I was a student here. Yep. And I stopped by to see him when I came back, and we chatted, and he says, Phil, you got a big job. How do you go about like doing what you know is ahead of you? I said, Coach, it's no different than what you do with your team.
Yeah.
Right? You evaluate your team, you evaluate the landscape, you assess them, you put together a plan, and you work that plan, and you make adjustments accordingly.
Yes.
And you get buy-in from the team. That's what you do. That's what you do. And it's easier said than done, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. But like one of the things that I love in this picture that you're painting is like, I think you've made it so clear that like, I think sometimes people look at leadership and it's singular. Leadership is plural. Like no good leader has not had a team. And like, I think even just the concept of singular or plurality and the function of understanding leadership, a leader who can't bring their team with them is not a leader.
No.
And so I think we have to start seeing leadership as your individual singular performance to bring with you. But if you cannot bring them with you, you're not going anywhere. Like right. At all. In fact, actually, you're going to go farther back than you maybe thought possible. And that's a fascinating thing, because I do think we talk about leadership as so singular. You have to do this. You have to do this. You have to do this. You have to do this and bring everyone with you at every turn. And I think that needs to be talked about more. So thank you for making that. It's just so clear in how you've talked about that.
Yeah, that's an interesting observation, because that you're absolutely right, and that's the truth. What's that old saying, right? It's like, you want to go fast, go alone. You want to go far, go together. And it rings true. And for somebody, again, this is where it talks about knowing yourself. That's my natural inclination is just to go and get things done.
Yeah.
But knowing that strength overused or used in the wrong times can become a liability, right? It's having that recognition to know when to activate that and when to sit back.
Yep.
Right? So you don't get misalignment and you don't get burnout. And that we heard a lot about people, morale being low and they're being burnout. And I'm looking over at my board because, there are days, believe it or not, where I have like a few minutes to reflect.
I love that for you. Great.
There's like this little whiteboard over here, right above, CIA. I have a little, it says misalignment, or it says burnout and discontent equals misalignment, or misalignment equals burnout and discontent.
Yes.
Right?
Okay, hold on. So I think one of the things, like when I think about even leading a team, you're leading, there's a team.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that this really looks like, and I love that in the burnout conversation, you're talking about misalignment. Like, it's actually like, I'm not leading and there's a team. It's like, we are all connected.
Bingo.
And I have to know each person. Like, I think about like literally like those kindergarten or preschool, like field trip, everyone's holding on to the same rope.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're not just moving and I'm leading, everyone is holding the same line. And I actually need to know each individual person.
Yeah.
Who they are, how they're motivated, how they operate, and their perception of their work. And I have to be aware of that line all the time.
Yes.
Because that an ounce of misalignment, an inch of misalignment, and all of a sudden you're not moving the way you thought you were going to. And that misalignment leads to burnout. And like, that is just, it is so cyclical. And I think sometimes you're like, oh, it just happens so fast. It does if you're not holding the line.
Yeah, you're not holding a line, and holding the line also means knowing your role.
Yes.
And recognizing your role. Right. And that's important. And, when I talk to our team here, I try to be very cognizant of, look, it's not lost on me that being chief of staff to the president carries a lot of weight and a lot of power. Right. And yeah, I could just go do something if I wanted to, but is that the right thing to do?
Right.
Right. And so what I try to do is I never try to get ahead of our team when they have a specific role.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I say, in your role, it's better that you do X, Y, and Z. And I always try to respect people's roles. Right. And give them and have them, not give them, but allow them and encourage them. It's really encouraging them to lean into their roles. Right. As other leaders.
Yes.
Over specific, whether it's initiatives, strategies, or even their particular unit. And I say, you let me know where you need my help.
Hold on.
Right?
Yes.
And I'm here to be a thought partner with you. I'm here to encourage you. I'm here to use my position, title, or whatever to try to help you problem solve and remove barriers.
Right.
Because for us, the path has been set. Our president is very visionary, right? Right before I got here, we adopted a strategic plan, and the question wasn't about the why or the what. The question now was how. And so, again, I feel like I came at the right time.
Yep.
Because I helped the team establish the how, the roadmap, the plan, so we can be what? Coordinated, intentional, and aligned.
Which, love and stealing. Thank you. TM, you and Jeff. One of the things that you've talked about, and I think this does come back a little bit to that authenticity, transparency, knowing yourself function. One of the things you've talked about is encouraging your people to be leaders. I think sometimes we're dealing with some deficit-based scarcity mindset. I need to hold the authority, the power, the decision-making, whatever. What encouragement do you have to give people an understanding, how to do that, giving that power and authority, but also really why it matters? Because I think this is a pain point.
Well, I think you mean encouraging to lead, or the other piece of, well, I guess you can look at it a couple of ways. Yeah, look, I tell people, well, you encourage people. We have a strong team here. We have a strong executive leadership team at UConn. And I brag on them all the time.
As you should. I love it.
I brag on them all the time because I believe it wholeheartedly. We've got some A players here. People that other universities would die to have two of those two of the people on our
Yep.
leadership team, let alone for us to have as many as we have.
Yeah.
Right. And so with that, it's saying, hey, you have a role to play in this, and walking people through the role that they have based on title, but then based on strengths
Yep.
and skill set. And that's when you but that comes by taking the time to sit, get to know people, to listen to them, understand them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a work in progress, right? That's a work in progress. And so look, it's again, you show up, your genuine self, and you encourage and show up for your people. And every chance that I get, like I said, I brag on them. And how can I help?
Yep.
Because even then, right, when you show up as your authentic self and people know that you're there genuinely to support them, the quote unquote hard conversations, when it's time to have those conversations, guess what? They're not that hard.
No.
Because you've built up the trust, you've built up the understanding, right? That when there needs to be a hard conversation, hey, people, yeah, they don't recognize it hard. They recognize it, hey, you know what? Phil and or so-and-so on the team is just giving me feedback,
right,
to help me or help us get to where we say we want to be.
Right.
And then that takes the ego out.
It takes the ego out. And also you should expect it, because I expect us to do well. I expect us to meet that outcome. I expect us to perform. And I think that is like, I had a friend in Florida that used to say expectations are premeditated disappointments. And so I think there are two ways to look at expectation. Like, one, I expect this is going to happen for no good reason, and I'm going to be disappointed. Or I know my leader, I know what he expects of my performance and our collective outcome, and he is expecting performance. So there's this negative and there's this positive too. I understand what the expectation is. So I can trust that this conversation is going to be handled with care. It's going to be appropriate because I trust my leader. That's right. I think that's an incredibly important part of this conversation. My dad used to say all the time, I'm a reckless user of the word love in corporate spaces. It's fine. He used to say all the time, like, if they know you love them, you can tell them anything.
There you go. And that starts to change, right? The perspective, right? Because when you talk about deficit mindset, that's a perspective. That's not reality. That's perspective.
Yes.
So when you shape the environment to be encouraging and supportive, people who operate in that, they're going to have a hard time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? They're going to have a real hard time, and they'll start making some decisions to maybe even self-select out.
Yep.
Or they will be such an outlier that the peer pressure will start, impacting them in different ways.
It works. I think that's and I think that is, however many jobs there are in the world, I have to believe there are other good places for you to be. Maybe this isn't your place, but this is how I lead. That's right. I think that is the other part of knowing who you are as a leader. I am radically upfront about that from the beginning. This is who I am. This is how I operate. This is how I lead. And this is what I expect of my team. Now I will carry you. Like when when you're having that day and it is hard, and I've got your back,
right?
But you need to understand the expectations. And I think that is, that is not for everyone. That's okay. Yeah. I know who I am. I'm not the right person for every role. Not every person is the right person to be on that team, but I will be incredibly honest with you about who I am and how I operate.
Yeah. And the reality is, once you get to a certain level, right, at any organization, and you hold a certain role or position, there's a role for you to play. Everybody has a bag to carry.
Yep.
Right. So, and there's going to be time, and I think I'm thinking about this now in the context of our plan and our strategies. Each member of our leadership team has a clear role to play in that. And they understand that role because we intentionally and strategically thought about it.
Yes.
And codified it, right, into our operational priorities, which then form the basis of our meetings and our conversations.
Yes.
So the clarity and encouragement and we don't deal with the deficit or lack mindset. Now look, everybody again has good and bad days, right? But you're there to support and encourage.
And I think like it is so important to carry performance with those things. They go hand in hand. And I think that that is important. And I appreciate that you clarified that, because that is important. I want to know directly from you, when, you know, when pressure is high and the stakes are visible and you're having a bad day, a hard day, an off day, what do you utilize or rely on that's like, I can get through this, I can keep going?
Ooh. All right. Normally when that happens, sometimes I just go take a walk.
Yep.
It means I just need time to settle, right? To come back to baseline, to settle my thoughts, settle my emotions, right? To regulate, as they say. And then I would say, because most people would probably immediately say, oh, well, it's my family. It is my family.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. My wife, and you know her.
Yep.
She is absolutely amazing. She's my ride or die, right? And my two wonderful children, they are why I do what I do. They bring me so much happiness. But I can't even show up for them unless I've regulated myself for what I'm about, for the different environment to be authentically who now? Phil that is husband, Phil that is dad, not Phil that is chief of staff. Right. So again, knowing yourself is about knowing when you need to regulate.
Yep.
Right. Knowing when you need, hey, I need a timeout. Right. Right. Yeah. It's like, hey, I need a timeout. And whether that timeout is going for a walk, whether that timeout is going for lunch with a colleague or by yourself, whether that timeout is whatever that timeout is that you need to kind of self-regulate, right? And what happens is lots of times, especially the leaders, because of our schedules and because of the demands, we go. At some point, you can't keep doing that. And you have to, and people have different thresholds for it, right? My threshold's pretty high. But when it gets there, I crash, and I crash hard. And I try to prevent that from happening. And so you, again, knowing yourself, you need to know what your threshold is when you need to start to regulate.
I appreciate everything about that. It is 2:44. I have two more questions. I'm going to try and get in and then be done on time. I had a conversation with two different friends in two different campuses in the last month or so that had elevated in their career and then said, I'm really not sure this is for me. I'm not sure that this is the capacity or the caliber I feel best operating in. And so a question I would ask you is, what encouragement or like, hey, that's okay. Like, how do we manage that? Like you're pushed, you're encouraged, you're promoted. You might find yourself in a place and say, I'm not sure this is for me. Do you have advice for someone who finds themselves in that space as a leader?
Lean into that, right? Interrogate it. Why isn't it for you? Right? Why did you think it was for you to begin with?
Great. Yes.
What have you learned along the way that changed? Did something about the profession or the environment change? Or was there a mindset shift that you had that changed? Right? So figure out, gain that understanding first. Because I feel as though if you don't, then you won't really know what the next thing is. Because as we know, like jobs are jobs. Each job comes with pluses and minuses, right? And if you haven't figured out what that thing is that changed or what you put value on, because it might be replicated then in something else.
Yep.
And you don't want to be, look, we're all at a different stage in our lives. I would say I'm kind of mid to late career, right? Soon. We don't have a lot of time to waste. So you need to be very thoughtful. I'm not saying that if you restart, you're wasting time. I'm not saying that.
Right.
It's a waste of time if you haven't learned the lessons to be learned through that experience.
Yes.
Right.
Those are the right questions. And I think what I love about those questions is I think they also work right in the positive. I'm in this job. I am liking it. Maybe, okay, so what has changed? Why did you think it was?
What was your perception going into it? Why did you think it was for you in the beginning?
Yes. And I think that I love that works in both directions, because I do feel like I'm having conversations with people at different spaces in this leadership conversation, which is why I love using this conversation to ask those questions and, crowdsource our information. But I think that those questions work in both spaces. Oh, I really like this. This is really working. What do you like about it? Because I think that happens too, where you say, oh, I really like this. You get promoted. Like, okay, I'm actually doing completely different work than I was doing. And now I'm not doing what I thought I was doing because I didn't ask those questions.
Right. And to that point, I find myself doing some impromptu, unofficial, sometimes official mentoring of students while I'm here. And it never fails that there's seniors that come up, particularly student athletes, right? Because they're about to make a big transition.
Yep.
A huge transition.
Yep.
And these are the conversations that I have with them, right? About being thoughtful about what's next. And here's some questions to ask yourself. And here's some things you might want to look further into.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay, I want to talk about that for a second. So if a student comes to you this spring, they're about to have, they're about to not have practice every minute of their life. Like this is a new reality, right? Like I love a student athlete moment. Is there a consistent piece of advice you're giving students who are graduating this spring?
You're ready for what's next. UConn has prepared you in the classroom and outside of the classroom through you being a student athlete for what's next, right? Look, we compete, we're about excellence here, and we compete at the highest level. So there are demands placed upon you. And those trials and those lessons and those victories and those losses have prepared you and are totally applicable to what's gonna come next. And you need to have faith that you are built for this and that you are ready for it.
I love that. Like you're ready for it's in you. And I think in those days where you're like, I don't know if it is, like, no, someone said it was. I was prepared. Like, as I think there is this reality, like, I love higher education. We're dealing with students. Where just because it hasn't been tested in this space or this environment doesn't mean we didn't give it to you.
That's right.
You have it. And I think there is this perpetual, like, well, we'll see how you navigate this transition to no, you've done hard things. Correct. And you have excelled and you will continue to do so. And we believe in you.
And we believe in you.
Phil, that's it. That's all.
Mic drop, we're done.
That was everything. Okay. I love that so much.
And this is, and when I get to do that, when I have the pleasure of doing that, it's a reminder of why I do what I do.
Yeah.
Right? So when I'm having a tough conversation with a staff member or a faculty member, or somebody doesn't agree with XY decision, it starts and ends with our students.
Yeah.
And are we helping our students be successful for what comes next? Right? I said, it's not about me.
Yep.
It's about them.
Well, and I love that we've kind of looped to the beginning of the conversation, because I think one of the things that stands out on how do you know what you're doing isn't about you? When were the moments you felt the most joy in the last year, and were you ever on the stage? Like, I can tell you the moments in my career that are the highest of highs. I am watching my team do their best. And I think that is a metric for hey, look over the last year. What are your highest of highs and what is happening in those moments?
Yeah.
Because knowing if you're looking at yourself or someone else will help you. And that doesn't mean, like, there are plenty of people who are successful and are doing things where they are on that stage. I'm not critiquing that. I am saying, as a leader, if your highest highs are watching your team do their best work, that might be a way to assess that metric.
Oh, without a doubt. I love it when I see members of the team in their flow state.
Yep.
Right? And you're like, yeah,
Yep.
when you're like,
Yep.
it's like that same conversation. You're ready for this. And I see it's funny because there are times where, I've been in, whether it's been in board meetings or other important meetings, and I'll be sitting next to one of my colleagues and my team members, and somebody will say something, and I will tap one of them or give them the look, right? And they know because we've talked about it or we prepared for it.
Yep.
And now's their time to shine.
Yep. Go. You're ready for what's next.
Right.
And like, that is the whole point of that. Like, especially in those moments where, maybe a year ago, they were like, I don't think I can do that. I'm not sure that's my skill set. I'm not sure I can do that. I'm not sure I can excel in that space. I don't know if I'm the right person. And you're like, I think you should try. And then you get to watch that happen and you're like, yeah, you were ready for what was next.
See?
Hey,
And that's
Phil,
what lights me up.
Yep.
That's what lights me up. That's what gets me up in the morning. That's what makes me push myself sometimes, where I'm like, okay, I can do one more minute before I go take that walk.
Because I do want to achieve this, actually, but then I will put myself but I do want to achieve first if I can.
Yeah, exactly.
Phil,
let me say something to you before we end. I love what you're doing. And you may not realize it now, right? And I know you got into this for a particular reason or reasons. But the impact that you're making and the lives that you're going to touch through this, like, what you're doing is meaningful and it's impactful. And you might not know it now, but there's going to be somebody somewhere going through some experience, and they're going to watch one of these, right? Because all the people that you've had, there's these nuggets of wisdom, right? That if people are watching and they're taking note of, they can use and apply globally. Yeah. Right. And so I just want to encourage you to keep doing what you're doing, having these conversations, and keep having fun with it. Right. Because everything's been so engaging. Every time you get a guest on, everybody looks like they're having fun and they're in their flow state. Yeah. So as long as you can, my friend, keep this thing going.
I believe firmly that we belong to each other, and we've lost the beauty of what it means to be obligated. I think it was the producer or the director of some movie at the Oscars said, I have been spoiled with an embarrassment of riches by working with this cast.
Wow.
And it was a humbling reminder that our wealth is so different than money. And I have been incredibly blessed by the people I've gotten to know and call friend. And that should not be sat on. It should not be wasted. It should be enjoyed and shared at every opportunity. So thank you for being a friend. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being a great leader and for being an encourager at all turns. I appreciate you immensely.
Thank you. That's mutual, my friend. As they say, I'll be corny. Ditto.
Phil, have a great Wednesday.
Too.
Bye, friend.
Bye.